She had learned, very early in her life, that beauty was a liability. On the world of Illyria, where crystalline cities rose like frozen waves beneath a lavender sky, worth was measured by symmetry of thought, not form. The Illyri valued precision, balance, and mental harmony above all else. Physical appearance was tolerated at best, scrutinized at worst. Any deviation from the narrow biological ideal was quietly corrected through isolation, genetic recalibration, or social erasure. Lyri was a deviation. Her skin did not refract light properly. Where other Illyri shimmered with smooth, prismatic hues, hers absorbed light unevenly, creating dull shadows along her arms and neck. One of her facial ridges curved slightly off-axis. Her eyes, instead of reflecting perfect fractal patterns, showed soft irregularities. To humans, she might have seemed breathtaking, ethereal, otherworldly, uniquely striking. To her people, she was flawed. From childhood, Lyri learned to keep her gaze lowered, her presence minimal. She mastered silence the way others mastered speech. When she walked the halls of learning spires, conversations dimmed. In reflective surfaces, she avoided her own image. The word ugly was never spoken aloud. It didn't need to be. In Illyri culture, disapproval was expressed through absence, through the quiet consensus that someone did not belong. By the time she reached maturity, Lyri had internalized it completely. When she was assigned as a secondary cultural analyst to the Interstellar Contact Initiative, she assumed it was because her appearance made her disposable. If something went wrong during first contact with humanity, she could be lost without consequence. She accepted the assignment without protest. The human vessel arrived months later. A blunt, utilitarian construct of metal and composite, nothing like the elegant Illyri ships grown rather than built. It docked with precise but inelegant movements, like an animal unsure of its footing. Lyri observed from behind a translucent partition as the delegation disembarked. There were 5 humans. Bipedal, asymmetrical, expressive to the point of chaos. One of them stood out immediately. He was taller than the others, his dark hair slightly disordered, his posture alert but relaxed. His uniform bore signs of wear, not ceremonial perfection. When he smiled at the Illyri hosts, it was unguarded, genuine. Commander Nathan Hale, according to the data feed. Lyri felt an unexpected tightening in her chest. The beginning of their interactions followed protocol. Formal greetings. Exchange of data crystals. Controlled environments. Lyri's role was to observe human emotional responses and provide cultural translation where needed. She spoke rarely, her voice soft and carefully modulated. Nathan noticed her on the first day. Not in the passing way others did, but deliberately. When she spoke to clarify a point about Illyri nonverbal cues, his eyes shifted to her and stayed there, not intrusive, not assessing, just attentive. "Thank you," he said, inclining his head slightly toward her. "That helps." The simple acknowledgement unsettled her more than outright rejection ever had. Over the next several cycles, the human delegation and Illyri council engaged in cautious dialogue. Trade possibilities. Scientific collaboration. Shared threats beyond their systems. Lyri continued her quiet role, offering insight when asked, fading into the background when not. But Nathan kept finding reasons to include her. "What do you think?" he asked during a discussion about exploratory ethics. "Is that interpretation accurate?" he said later, during a debate on communication frameworks. Each time, Lyri answered succinctly, professionally. Inside, confusion churned. Why was he looking at her? The middle of the story began with an accident. During a joint visit to the atmospheric gardens, a vast dome filled with adaptive flora from dozens of worlds, a containment failure caused a localized energy surge. Protective fields flickered. Alarms sounded. Panic rippled through the delegates. Leary was closest to the failing conduit. Before she could react, the surge knocked her off balance. She would have fallen into the reactive flora below, plants that responded aggressively to unfamiliar biochemistry if a human arm hadn't caught her. Nathan pulled her back with surprising strength, shielding her with his body as security systems reactivated. For a moment, they were very close. Leary froze. Her people avoided physical contact whenever possible. Touch was intimate, invasive. She expected revulsion, or at least discomfort, when he realized how close he was to her imperfect form. Instead, Nathan released her slowly. Concern etched across his face. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No," she replied, voice unsteady. "I am intact." "Good," he said, relief evident. That was too close. She stared at him, searching for signs: disgust, discomfort, polite avoidance. There were none. Later that cycle, protocol required a private debrief. Nathan requested her presence specifically, citing her proximity to the incident. They met in a quiet observation chamber overlooking Alira's glowing horizon. "You reacted quickly," he said. "You saved yourself before I even reached you." "That is inaccurate," Leary said. "You intervened." He smiled faintly. "Still, you kept your head." Silence followed. Leary shifted, self-conscious. The reflective surface of the viewport faintly mirrored her irregular features. She turned away instinctively. Nathan noticed. "May I ask you something?" he said carefully. Her pulse quickened. "If it is within protocol." "Is it rude to look at you directly?" he asked. "I get the sense I'm doing something wrong." She stiffened. This was it, the moment of clarification, of polite correction. "In my culture," she said, choosing her words with care, "direct attention toward physical form is discouraged. It invites judgment." "Ah," Nathan said. "That explains a lot." She waited for him to avert his gaze. He didn't. "Then I'll be careful," he said. "But for what it's worth, I don't feel like I'm judging." Her breath caught. "Then what do you feel?" He hesitated, as if realizing he'd stepped onto unfamiliar ground. "Curiosity, respect, and admiration, I think." The word echoed painfully in her mind. Admiration was not meant for someone like her. Over the following cycles, their conversations deepened. Nathan spoke of Earth, its oceans, its crowded cities, its messy history of conflict and compassion. He admitted humanity's flaws openly, without the polished superiority Illyri diplomats favored. Leary found herself speaking more freely than she ever had. About Illyri philosophy, about the pressure to conform, about the quiet pain of never being enough. One cycle, as starlight filtered through the chamber and painted her skin in muted hues, she finally said it. "I am considered ugly by my people." The word tasted bitter. Nathan frowned. "Ugly." "Yes," she said, bracing herself. "My form deviates from the ideal. I disrupt aesthetic harmony." He looked genuinely confused. "Leary, I don't see that at all." "That is because you are human," she replied. "Your standards are inconsistent." He laughed softly. "That's one way to put it." Then he grew serious. "Where I come from," he said, "beauty isn't about symmetry. It's about presence, about the way someone exists in the world." She met his eyes reluctantly. "And you," he continued, "have a presence that makes people listen, even when you're trying to disappear." Her skin flushed faintly, color blooming unevenly. "You should not say such things." "Why not?" "Because they are untrue," she whispered. "And because I will want to believe them." The ending began with a choice. The Illyri Council concluded their evaluation shortly after. Humanity was deemed promising, but unstable. Alliance would be limited. cultural exchange restricted, and Leary, as a deviation who had grown too close to a foreign species, was to be reassigned, quietly, removed from the initiative, sent to an outer research enclave where her presence would not complicate future diplomacy. Nathan learned of the decision accidentally, through a fragment of untranslated data. He sought her out immediately. "They're sending you away," he said, anger barely contained. "Because of me." "Not because of you," Leary corrected gently. "Because I forgot my place." He shook his head. "That's not how this should work." "This is how it has always worked," she replied. They stood together beneath the dim lights of the docking chamber. The human ship was preparing to depart. So was the transport that would take Leary into quiet exile. Nathan took a breath, then did something entirely out of protocol. "Come with us," he said. She stared at him. "That is not possible." "Why not?" he pressed. "We're building a coalition based on shared understanding. You're exactly the kind of voice we need." "I am a liability," she said automatically. "You're a bridge," he countered. "And you deserve to be seen." Her heart raced. Everything she had been taught screamed that this was dangerous, foolish, impossible. "And if your people reject me?" she asked. He smiled, not with certainty, but with hope. "Then we'll deal with it. Humans are good at adapting." Leary looked at her reflection in the polished floor, at the uneven light, the imperfect lines. For the first time, she did not turn away. "I do not know if I am beautiful," she said softly. Nathan met her gaze. "You don't have to be." She considered that. When the ships departed Alira, they did so together. In the years that followed, Leary became something unprecedented, a cultural envoy who redefined Illyri assumptions and challenged human expectations. Her insights helped prevent conflicts, forge alliances, and reshape how entire civilizations understood difference. Among humans, she was never called ugly. Among her own people, the word slowly lost its meaning. And one quiet evening, as she stood beside Nathan watching unfamiliar stars drift past, she realized something profound. She no longer measured herself by how others saw her. She had learned to exist, fully, imperfectly, beautifully, because one human had looked at her and seen not a flaw, but a person. And that changed everything.